Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for part 2 in which I watched the Shayne Jansen interview. He's from Love is Blind. He is on the Nick Vial podcast YouTube channel. Let's watch.
Watch the show. Anything that you maybe adjust in terms of like your energy, your approach.
Great question. I'm always curious about this. I can't imagine what it would be like for any of us to have this. I mean, just imagine, even if you're not on a reality TV show, that your worst moments are being filmed by a professional crew and then edited and then presented to you months later. Just imagine that. And I've talked about this before, that with some of the couples that I treat, they will record themselves audio-wise as they're having a discussion, and then they'll listen back as an exercise of being able to identify the problems that you presented. Because when we're in the middle of a tense conversation, we will often we're all narcissistic in this way, and self-centered, that we will tend to not see how we're coming across to other people. We'll tend to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt as we're in a tense conversation and not the other person. We'll see the things we don't like about the other person. We'll hear their bad tone. We'll remember the ways that the things that they said that were harmful and dysfunctional and unfair, but we tend not to remember what we did. And if you watch yourself, you're like, whoa. It can be overwhelming to some people, actually, and so I will actually caution people about doing that too much. But for the people on the show, I'm always curious that you would think it would be an opportunity to really learn, like, that's how I come across? Man, I got to work on that. Let's see what he says.
To people or maybe nothing at all. Because it's a weird thing, right? Watching yourself back and being like, I do that.
Yeah, man. It's so like I said, the one time for sure is when I gaslit Natalie, and like so our form of communication is so different. Where she's very quiet. She'll think.
Okay, so he's saying gaslit Natalie. I think when people are using that term, I'm just going to insert the word manipulate, because it's not actually gaslighting what people do on these shows typically. So I wonder what he thinks he did that manipulated her or tricked her in some way.
Things through first, and like we'll come back and talk 20 minutes later. Whereas me is like, I just want to get off my chest. Let's go at it right now, and like let's try to talk it out. I need to learn how to like just listen and not having such a reactive emotion right away.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think a lot of us are that way, Shayne included. He's saying, when I watched it, I bulldozed her, is a way that I use it. That's a word that I use and in my practice. And he regrets that. He saw that, and he is telling himself, look, next time that happens, slow down, listen, don't bulldoze forward, take the time. Good.
Way to it, and that's what I do every time. It's like I have that reactive emotion, and it's something that I wish, I didn't have. Something I'm trying to work on. Seeing a therapist, all this kind of stuff. Yes, I am.
For you.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, seeing a therapist, that's good. It sounds like he's working on that issue in particular. That's great. I'm always wondering what sort of therapy these individuals are getting, because just because someone's in therapy doesn't necessarily mean that it's the helpful version of therapy for them, but it sounds like they're working on that, which would be helpful for sure.
Like a lot of people are reactive.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't good at dealing with those types of emotions.
Right. But most people don't have the energy that I have, and that's a double negative right there with that situation, I feel like.
Yeah.
So they want, like, that's the number one thing is just like, I just got to like make sure, I just got to take time, and like, nothing good comes from what is happening now will still be there, 30 minutes from now. And
okay, good. This is something I talk with a lot of clients about. I talk to myself about this, that when we are in a tense moment with our partners, there's, for some of us, particularly extroverts, particularly hyperactive individuals, impulsive individuals, this compulsion to fix it now. We must fix it now. It must be fixed now. And that can help us to motivate us to fix it, but also can tend to cause us to bulldoze. It can cause us to have a lot of anxiety and a lot of desperation. We might take some shortcuts by telling someone that their thoughts are wrong and their feelings are wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about, and that's more hurt that you're just piling on. So for him, he's learning that he needs to remember, slow down. This problem will we can address this 30 minutes from now. And This is something that all of us could benefit from, because whenever we're in a fight with our partner, our distress level will go up, even if you don't notice it. In fact, most people don't even notice as their distress level is going up. It can be kind of hard to detect, but when you actually hook us up to different biomarkers of stress, we actually will see that, and up to a certain level, a lot of people, they don't even know it's happening to them. So whenever you're in a tense conversation, you have to assume that you're probably starting to become distressed, fight or flight reaction, this kind of thing, which makes us more negative. It makes it harder for us to make decisions. It paints everything in a very negative light. What the other person is saying, we're more likely to be triggered. And so in that state, past a certain threshold, it's nearly impossible, if not impossible, to have a functional conversation in that state. And so you must take a break. You must be able to say, let's give it. And one of the things to beat into your head is, we can talk about this in 30 minutes. We don't have to talk about it right now. How about we take 30 minutes, take a break, relax. And if we feel the same as I do now, then I'll just pick it up where I left off. But if I feel differently, maybe I'll be able to have a better conversation.
Hour from now, you gotta chill out and I just gotta learn how to control my energy better. I do a very bad job of it. It's fun to be around, but it's not fun with your partner and you're arguing and all.
All right, he's talking about being able to control his energy. I don't know what he's talking about specifically, but maybe it's about ADHD and hyperactivity. It's hard to control that. I hope that he has a comprehensive approach to that control of impulsivity and hyperactiveness, because what'll happen for a lot of people is they think they just need greater willpower, and willpower is almost never effective on anything. If you're trying to have willpower to stop drinking, if you're trying to have willpower regarding a new diet or something, or willpower regarding something like this, it doesn't work. Willpower is overemphasized and believed in too much in our society, as if you just have to try harder. And putting effort into it might help a little bit, but usually what will work is a system. You have to put things in place such that when the time comes, you don't need willpower. Like with alcoholism, there's no alcohol in your house. With impulsivity, you might want to talk with people around you about noticing the signs of increased possibility of impulsivity, becoming aware of, as your likelihood of impulsivity and hyperactivity starts to mount, you can, calm down earlier on, that kind of thing. So it sounds like he's still in a willpower stance paradigm. Hopefully he's not.
I had no idea what she was going to say at the altar. No idea. My parents were, my mom was in town. My whole family was in town. I was so embarrassed that my anxiety was going crazy.
Why were you embarrassed? Because you were about to get married to someone
you have to go to the altar, right? So it's such an awkward, uncomfortable situation, right?
What do you mean you have to go to the altar?
You have to go to the altar.
I think what he's referring to is the show requires them to go to the altar. You can't avoid that. And even if you have a conversation prior with your partner, maybe one of us is going to say no, you still have to go to the altar. That's interesting. And I suspected that. I think we've heard that from other people as well. That is the trope on the show. And I would say, if I were in the producer's room, I would say, the viewers, they don't need to see it at the altar. I know that's sort of the clip that you're going to watch if it's a viral clip, someone saying yes and someone saying no. But for me anyway, as a viewer, I'm more interested in, do these people actually want to be in a relationship with each other? Like with, what were their names? Oh, I'm forgetting all their names. The guy who sang a lot, anyway, that couple. And for them, it seemed as though way before the wedding had decided, one or both, that they were not going to get married, but they were forced to kind of string it out. That's the way it seemed to be. Who knows? It makes it a not very enjoyable watching experience, because I feel like I'm being manipulated by the producers to believe that there's still a chance, or even to believe that they are going to get married. I mean, the whole kind of premise is that there's absolutely yes, 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 and then at the altar, no, when we all kind of understand as viewership that they might be maybe no. Like, that's okay. It doesn't have to be, this black and white, dating, engaged, yes, and then no. Like, anyway, so it sounds like Shayne is saying that. Now, I think Shayne might be under contract to not reveal behind the scene things, so he might be dancing around it. Let's see what he says.
You have to?
You have to. Whether you say yes or no is up to you, but you have to go through with it. Yeah.
How do they make you?
What's kind of what you sign up for?
No, I know. But
I have to. You have to do it. I mean, I don't know. Like, I didn't read my contract that well, I guess, but like everyone does it. You have to go up to the altar.
Okay, so Nick is actually a pretty good interviewer. He's asking some pretty good questions, and seems to have a nuanced, compassionate view. I don't know him, who knows, but in this instance. But anyways, he's like, what do you mean you have to? And Shayne's like, well, you have to. I haven't really looked at the contract. So either Shayne doesn't really understand the contract and just remember the broad details of just like, well, I have to, and he never really questioned like, well, what would be the consequence if I didn't? Or he is trying not to reveal that the money depends on going through with the whole thing, or I don't know, maybe they can even sue you if you tank the show, right? Because there's so much investment that they're putting in these people. Maybe Shayne will reveal that.
That's the point of the show, I think.
Totally. They need the clip at the end.
They need the clip at the end.
But that's like, I get that. And there's like, being on The Bachelor, there's
that other podcaster, YouTuber person said, you need the clip at the end. I disagree. I don't need it, especially if it's going to be faked up until the wedding. Like, I just pull the plug if it's not. Having said that, I guess if everyone was allowed to avoid the altar, then only those who were yes would actually go, right? Especially if people had any compassion towards their partner. Now, I do think that for Natalie and Shayne, that it really did kind of come down to the last minute, at least the day before. I think I even saw an interview with Natalie, or was it during the reunion, that she said she was yes until they had a fight the night before, because he went out drinking during the bachelor party. And you could imagine her waking up the next day and thinking, am I still a no? I don't really know. Maybe I'll change my mind. I think that's what's happened.
Yeah. And so when you say very like confidently and definitively, no, you have to do that. That I'm just curious as to like, did you honestly feel like you were like, no, fuck it, I'm
oh yeah, the night before, I hit up some like the producers and whatnot, and I'm like, I can't do this. I don't want to go. We have to see it through.
And what did they say?
We have to see it through.
Have to see it through.
But what if he just like ran? You know what I mean?
I'd probably have a fat lawsuit on my back.
Right. So they're asking the good question, like, well, what if you just ditched the whole thing? And he's saying there would be a lawsuit. I wonder if that's true. I could see them implying that would happen, but I can't imagine that there would be legal standing for that. I mean, who knows what the contract involves, but I don't know. Because we've seen other people do things like this, right? The Bachelorette, that one Bachelorette last year who chose someone before she eliminated anyone, I think, or it was early on she chose someone, and that obviously is not what you're supposed to do. And I think in the few times I've watched that show, it seems clear that the central figure, the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, will sometimes seemingly choose someone earlier, but string it out a little bit longer, just to not, anger the producers. In fact, that one situation with Greg, you could argue their whole conflict was just around that. I can't remember the woman's name, but she was trying to adhere to that model, and Greg was like, but I want an indication from you now that we're in a relationship. And when she didn't provide that, even though she was giving a lot of signals that he was the one, he just became so hurt and so triggered that he got hostile and that kind of stuff. Anyway, so you just have to wonder if it's just implied. I mean, you can imagine being the producers and thinking, look, we just want people to follow the formula. We don't want to sue anyone because it makes us look bad. Obviously, it costs a lot of money. and we don't want people to kind of worry about that, but we really want to pressure people. So you can imagine a pretty elaborate system of control of you will do what we tell you to do. You have freedom within that mold, of course, but you will do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, then there's this really horrible thing that will happen to you, even though it might not.
Yeah, that was our bachelor and bachelorette party nights. Okay, obviously it's a
the
little,
night before.
No. So it was like 2 nights before.
Okay.
Technically, I think I'm trying to think. It was so long ago. It was It wasn't the night before. We didn't have our bachelor party night the night before.
But
the
it was,
wedding. It was that night. It's our bachelor party night. We're all we were at Wrigley Field that night, ready, and like they were at their boat cruise or something like
and
that.
they filmed that.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
where you were
But
like
then,
a
yeah.
really bad baseball player.
Oh, don't get me started.
I'm glad that they're talking about this. So it sounds like the bachelor party was 2 nights at least before the wedding. And Nick is giving him crap about being a bad baseball player. Yeah, I talked about that at the time, and I'd like to think that I wouldn't react like Shayne, but as a former jock myself, I could imagine feeling what he was feeling. And I know that it wasn't a good look. It was like he looked very childish or strange to be so bent out of shape for so long about striking out. He seemed like he was boasting prior, saying that he's going to do great, and then he strikes out. And yeah, like one of my nightmares is that somehow I'm asked to throw the first pitch at a Mariners game or something along those lines, and I just completely screw it up. Like I throw it and it just skips on the ground or goes flying. Like it's one of my nightmares, because if I wasn't a jock, if that wasn't part of my identity as growing up, then I'd be like, well, I'm just not a jock. But when you played a lot of sports, like at least you internally believe you're supposed to do things. But one of the things that I actually kind of did for that, because I didn't like that pressure I was putting on myself, is that when I went to college, I actually actively avoided talking about sports with anyone. And in fact, I in college was on a intramural football team, a flag football team, and we were playing, and people were like, "Oh, you're actually kind of good at football. Why are you good at football?" And I was like, "I was captain of the football team. Like, I should be good at football. I played my whole life." So, in fact, I thought I was gonna play in college, but I didn't, and I found that actually good, because I didn't want people to. I didn't like the pressure growing up playing sports, and I'm sure you jocks out there will relate to this. That maybe not, but either internally or externally, there's a lot of pressure. Especially if you're kind of good, you have a lot of pressure to be the best and to never make mistakes. And I hated that. And I remember, I love sports, but I hated that. And when I remember the very last day of sports in high school for me, I just felt like this weight, like a physical feeling to some extent, was just lifted off of my shoulders. And I thought, I never have to train again. I never have to play another game of anything again. I never have to perform again. I never have to deal with a coach I don't like again. I never have to be in the dirt. I mean, just a little detail. Growing up in the Seattle area, there's a lot of rain. We're known for rain. And thus, there's a lot of mud. And we didn't have turf. We didn't have artificial turf back then. Very few places had artificial turf. And the places that did, it was that awful 80s artificial turf that would just rip your skin off. I mean, it was... Now the turf is like just magical. It's just like this perfect, cushy, perfect turf. But when I was a kid, it was grass, and it was not well-kept grass. And by mid-season, it was just rocks and sand, particularly in the middle of the field where the linemen typically dug up the field. One of my friends, actually playing football, had a rock lodged in his knee, a little pebble, for months, because of that's what we were playing on, So, and then you would have practices where you would be up and down and push-ups and, all these kinds of drills, and obviously playing football, you're on the ground, and just the cold, muddy, wet, uncomfortable, it gets into your bones. It's all a month long of particularly October and November, and just that feeling of just not being able. Anyway, I'm rambling. let's get back to Shayne.
That was honestly the most embarrassing part.
And Jarrett,
Jarrett.
he looked like a natural.
I know. My one chance of shine. I
tried too hard.
I failed. And dude, people didn't. The whole
Did
thing,
you play baseball?
The whole bad slamming on my knee thing. That was supposed to be a joke about just like a Bo Jackson kind of breaking over my knee thing, but that was obviously not taken that way. Yeah, I played baseball my whole life, college baseball too.
Well, he played college baseball too. So yeah, I mean, I didn't play college ball at all, and to be, I mean, you have to be good to play college typically, and to, just completely whiff. And I'm sure all the other dudes that were on the bachelor party, many of, and what's his face, I can't remember his name, said he'd never swung a bat before, and he actually poked it pretty well. So I can relate to Shayne at this moment.
College ball?
Dude, I went up there swinging for the fences. I went up there hard.
Exactly. And that's what I said. I'm sorry to get into the weeds on this. I'm sure you didn't watch this thing for me to get into the weeds on this, but just to, I speculated that because I actually played baseball and went through a phase where I tried to hit it out of the park. And there's a psychological problem you get in. It's similar with golf, actually, that if you try to hit it hard, you won't hit it hard, or you'll even miss. And one of the things, the ball comes in basically on a straight line. And if you're trying, there's a psychological thing that if you're trying to hit it out of the park, you'll scoop it, you'll come underneath it, but you have to hit it straight on, because if you scoop it, you're very likely to not sync up the bat with the ball. Whereas if the ball's coming in this way and the bat's coming this way, you have a much greater chance of actually hitting it, right? There's a lot of technique to being a batter, but I suspected that because he was trying to show off, because he had such internal pressure, he was trying to hit it out of the park instead of just hitting it. If he just hit it, he might have actually hit it out of the park. But when you're trying to, and I went through a phase, like I said, in when I played as a kid, and because I think I said this in the original thing, I'm sorry to get into the weeds of this. I was a pretty big kid. I was, especially at a certain phase, like middle school time, I was like a good foot taller than everyone else. And so when I hit it farther, and I would, pretty often hit a home run, not always, of course, but, and when I had that experience, people started to have that expectation, not only my team, but the opposing team. They would hear about me and they'd be like, oh, big hitter, slugger, move back and watch out. And so then all the parents would be like, ooh, Kirk's at bat, he's going to hit it out of the park. And so you have all this pressure, and I better hit it out of the park instead of just hitting it. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.